Hey guys, what is up? This is Matthew Davis, me once again. Welcome back to the movie review, aka After I Saw. This time is going to be on Lee Cronin's The Mummy. Now, this movie is directed by, Lee Cronin, and we follow this family where their oldest daughter gets taken away, and 8 years later, after she gets found, she reunites with her family, though she's a lot more different than how she seems. As, of course, demonic stuff happens throughout the house, specifically with her. She starts losing parts of her body, specifically her skin. And yeah, a lot of crazy stuff goes on in this movie. And this is just a director's version of The Mummy, just, not trying to, tie in with anything that Brendan Fraser did with the original Mummy movies. Well, original-ish, because that was more of a spin on the 30s film that came out, in the 30s or I don't know, the classic Hammer horror film, like Frankenstein and Wolfman. So yeah, but when the trailer dropped for this movie, people were very split on it. People didn't like the way it looked. People thought, it looked very generic, and they had absolutely no idea why this didn't have Brendan Fraser, even though there's going to be another Brendan Fraser Mummy movie. Believe it or not, I never saw any of those movies, probably because I wasn't too big into Brendan Fraser back then, but ever since The Whale came out, I appreciate him a lot more, and I can definitely say I am more of a fan of his work after really, succeeding at his comeback. And I enjoyed the movie that he made, that he was in last year. I think it was called Family. I don't know, I didn't review it, but yeah, so I can't really compare this to that, but then again, nobody really should, because I've read reviews on the film saying, it's not anything like the Brendan Fraser movie, so we shouldn't really tie it in to that. So, yeah, I'm not going to do that, especially for, somebody who's never seen the Brendan Fraser films. I'm just judging this by, how it does try to do an original spin on The Mummy, and I'm using quotations because there is hardly any originality in this film. Now, I'm going to tell you right off the bat, this is not a terrible movie. It's not even a bad film. It's passable. I can definitely say I was worried about, its 2-hour runtime. I thought it was just going to be, a lot of people talking and giving it a lot of exposition. And while that does often happen, specifically towards like the last hour or so, it honestly wasn't boring. So I can definitely say that. Its 2-hour runtime doesn't feel slow. It's definitely not much of a slow-moving film. I thought the opening sequence was great, and hell, even the ending, while it was a bit bittersweet, I thought, yeah, it ended like in a way I expected. So, yeah, I went in with as low expectations. I was hoping that this movie would really surprise me, and the fact that, Lee Cronin, director of Evil Dead Rise, which I thought was fantastic, would do more with his filmography after succeeding at that film. Especially since, we are getting another Evil Dead movie. He's going to be an executive producer for that, and someone else is going to be behind the camera for that. But really looking forward to that. But it almost feels like we got that new Evil Dead movie a little bit early, because that's what this movie feels like. As I was watching this movie, I kind of forgot that the movie was called The Mummy, because this movie just really felt like Evil Dead Rise again. As I was watching this movie, it involves a family who has a family member that gets possessed and does very wacky things involving, like saying, stuff that the devil would say, like in an Exorcist vibe a little bit. So yeah, I just didn't really feel like this movie was doing much to like reimagine on, its source material a whole lot, because ultimately what this movie lacks in is, trying to be original in its own take on the Mummy, because it has very, very obvious cliches that, can oftentimes feel very predictable. I mean, people do some really stupid shit in this movie, and it can just feel laughable. But that's not to say, it's laughable in terms of its performances. Everybody is fine in the movie, and hell, I even thought that the makeup effects were pretty cool for the most part. So, yeah, it's a nice looking movie when it comes to, like, the details to, like, the creatures or the woman being possessed, because I couldn't really say mummy because she didn't really feel a lot like a mummy. Like, oftentimes I just felt like I was watching, another possession movie, because it oftentimes just doesn't feel like, well, I'm repeating myself, but I know it sounds like I really do not like this movie, but like I said before, it's not a boring film. I mean, when it comes to like when it does get to like, actual gruesome stuff, like there is some very gory scenes that I wasn't expecting. Like I did not know what it was going to do when it came to its gore, like how I didn't really see a trailer except for like one time, but I didn't really remember a whole lot happening in the trailer. So I didn't really know a whole lot on what to expect for this film. So yeah, I don't really have a whole lot to say, but I just felt like, by the end of this movie, I felt like this could have been, a great reimagining, something on the lines of The Invisible Man that came out in 2020, because that was a very original take on The Invisible Man. It was doing its own thing, while also tackling, serious subjects on toxic relationships and also feeling very frightening. I wouldn't say this movie is particularly scary, because again, oftentimes it can feel a little bit too comedic from time to time, but it definitely does take itself a lot more seriously than something like, the Brendan Fraser Mummy movies, and that's coming from a guy that hasn't even seen the movies, but I know what the premise of the Mummy movies are, so yeah. But I feel like if I was watching the Tom Cruise movie, I would definitely probably say that this is better than that. So ultimately for me, I was kind of expecting a little bit more from this, but ultimately it just felt like, Evil Dead Rise again, especially since, this is coming from the guy that made Evil Dead Rise and is just doing something that he's already done before and just slapping the mummy on it to just make it feel, oh, this is completely different. So yeah, well, it does follow on the lines of that. I can't really say, it bored me to tears. I understood what was going on, but ultimately for me, I wanted something that just felt a little bit more fresh. So, while yeah, it's not a horrible movie by any means, I just wish there was more imagination in this one. Some people will love it for its gore, some people will hate it because they wanted something a lot more different. So, yeah, it just depends what you're in for. So, yeah, but I didn't really want to rush on reviewing this one. So, yeah, but anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and maybe subscribe for more. You can also follow me on Twitter, Instagram, or maybe Blue Sky. Links are in the description. And I'll see you guys later. Word out.